Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson attempts to create ice-free zones while saying the president has declared war on Chicago. And new documents provided by Senator Chuck Grassley confirm the Biden administration's FBI illegally spied on 8 U.S. senators. I'm Tony Kinnett, host of the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. Scandal out of Chicago over the weekend in which Border Patrol were attacked in a domestic terror incident and called for help from the Chicago Police Department. New horrifying information as well as screenshots and audio recordings from the dispatch office for the Chicago Police Department reveal that the chief of patrol had ordered no units from the Chicago Police Department would respond to any request for help from federal forces. Although originally the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department tried to say that this wasn't the case.
At any time on Saturday, were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, a supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action, all of the exact language that was there. But I have had a conversation with the chief of patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on the scene. The chief of patrol at that time had no information that anyone was in danger. And let me just be clear about one other thing when it comes to these federal agents. These federal agents can handle themselves, all right? We've been out there and we've seen it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to leave them because we know that they can handle themselves. We need to make sure that we have our officers and enough of them to respond to a scene if they are being surrounded. So were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us.
After being pressed by reporters, he started to change his story just a bit.
The feds called for help at 12:28 p.m. There's a computer message time-stamped at 12:28 p.m. that says no units will respond. The dispatchers later captured on audio saying that she's waving off units from 39th and Kedzie. I am wondering what would you call that, if not a stand down, and if there were already enough units on scene, how many were there, circa 12:28, 12:30 p.m.?
That's something else that we have to look at, and we have to see because sometimes what you hear on the radio does not necessarily reflect what's happening on the ground once someone's there, but we did have officers over there.
And then later yesterday, Chicago's Democrat Mayor Brandon Johnson appeared to both confirm and deny, then confirm again, that this event took place.
Confirming the reports that Chicago police were ordered to stand down when ICE agents were surrounded and rammed by cars. And do you want Chicago police not to help ICE agents?
Our police officers respond to every single emergency in this city. The brave women and men who sign up to serve and protect this city are committed to keeping us safe. And what we have made very clear is through our Welcoming City Ordinance, when it comes to civil immigration enforcement, absent a warrant, our police department will not dub as federal ICE agents. In fact, we believe it's antithetical to driving violence down in the city of Chicago.
These weren't the most controversial statements made by Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday. He also announced that there would be ICE-free zones that the federal government would not be allowed to enter for upholding federal law. He then went completely off the rails, saying that Republicans were in the mood for another civil war and that the president had declared war on the city of Chicago and its people.
The right wing in this country wants a rematch of the Civil War. I want that to sit in right now, because the President of the United States of America has declared war on the people of Chicago and people across America.
Following this and the situation in Portland, Oregon, the president stated to White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, Reagan Reese, that Republican governors, for example, like Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, were offering National Guardsmen to the Trump administration to dispatch to blue cities engaging in unrest, insurrection, or, of course, activity against federal law enforcement. PBS later confirmed President Trump's plan to deploy National Guard troops from Texas, 400 of them, to Chicago, Illinois. Illinois has since sued the administration. Here's a statement from Governor Pritzker calling the move illegal.
Well, let's be clear that it is illegal, in fact, to call out the National Guard or to send troops into American cities. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits that.
And a major political scandal that dwarfs Watergate yesterday from Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, revealing documentation and records showing the Federal Bureau of Investigation actively spied on 8 Republican senators during the Biden administration and the Jack Smith investigations.
Solicitation of these telephone records, which I think emphasizes the political weaponization that was behind all this effort. And we're still getting more information, but we've released some records today, and I'll let Senator Johnson take over from here, and then each one of you colleagues can join in when you want to, whatever you want to say.
First of all, I want to thank Senator Grassley. It is because of his relentless advocacy for whistleblowers that a lot of this information is surfacing right now. We wouldn't know about the list of 100 Republican entities that were targeted by Jack Smith's Arctic Frost investigation. I don't think we know about this as well. So we need whistleblowers. I think Dan Bongino and folks in the FBI, they don't know where all the records are hidden. They still don't. They're not necessarily getting 100% cooperation. But this is outrageous what has happened. I just want to give you a timeline of this. I think you've already got the FBI sheet that shows the number of members of Congress that were targeted. Representative Kelly, Senators Graham, Haggerty, Hawley, Sullivan, Tuberville, myself, Senator Lummis, and Blackburn. Now, this memo was dated September of 2023. To put it all into context, the Mar-a-Lago raid occurred in August of 2022. Jack Smith announced the indictments against President Trump in August of 2023. So this is almost 2 months later. They're casting this net, this fishing expedition against members of the Senate and the House. Again, I've been investigating this with Senator Grassley. This doesn't surprise me, but it should shock every American of what the Biden administration has done. By the way, this is the first time I was targeted by the FBI. Under the Obama administration, the same thing happened to both Senator Grassley and I. As part of the Foreign Influence Task Force, we were giving a briefing to try and convince us that the Hunter Biden laptop was no big deal. Basically, trying to throw us off the track. So this is major corruption.
Senator Bill Haggerty of Tennessee, one of the individuals whose phones were tapped and his phone records recorded, also talked about a series of consequences and a full investigation for the American people.
This is an extraordinary revelation that just took place this afternoon. My colleagues and I found out, all of us Republicans, by the way, that we were placed under investigation by this FBI, under the Joe Biden FBI that was led, I presume, by Jack Smith and his predecessors. This isn't the first time that it's happened, though. Senator Johnson just mentioned this. I served on the Trump transition team in Trump Tower in 2016. Senator Blackburn was vice chair of the transition committee then, as were probably a dozen or more members of Congress. To think that we were surveilled by the Obama FBI. This corruption runs deep, and it's gone on for far too long. And the fact that it's happened here again, the fact that they are looking at our records in 2023, sitting members of the United States Senate. Again, the only thing that we have in common, the only thing in common in this entire list is that we're all Republicans.
As a reminder, the Watergate scandal toppled the Richard Nixon presidency because members of his administration were involved with tapping and recording the inside of the Democratic National Committee and several conversations. The recording of 8 sitting U.S. senators without any information so far that shows any legitimate cause for recording the private communications and the internal function of the legislative body which oversees accountability for the Federal Bureau of Investigations is one of the largest legal scandals in this nation's history. And we plan to dive more into this particular scandal and what this means for the institution of the FBI and the American people at large with Senator Ron Johnson later. So make sure that you subscribe to the Tony Kinnett Cast by clicking on the link down in the description so you don't miss a second of our exclusive coverage right at the top. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.